Welcome back! We continue to prepare our details for assembling and have already treated edges as necessary on this stage. In this episode, we will do the rest of the preparations in 3 steps. The first step. Do you remember we talked about the overlap that we have between these two front details? The detail of the dark brown leather is laying on top and has a thickness of 1.2 millimeters, but the detail that is made of cognac leather has thickness about 2 millimeters. So totally together we have more than 3 millimeters thickness in the area of the overlap. Compared with overall thickness of the computer case, it seems too much, and I want to reduce the thickness of the cognac color detail. Option number 1 is to split it totally so all of the details will have the same thickness. But I don't want to do that because the flesh side of this leather is processed, so I want to keep its appearance. It's even better that it's thicker and harder so it will hold the shape of the case. So what I'm going to do is to reduce the thickness of this particular area with help of splitting machine and a special pattern. We've already talked about it a bit, but I remind you that the idea here is that you apply the additional thickness on those areas of the detail that you want to make thinner and run it through the splitting machine, so it cuts off only where it is thicker. So I have to create a pattern for splitting. The base for the pattern is a transparent plastic, and as I determine the shape of the area that I want to split, I cut it and glue it on. After that, I measure the thickness of the leather that I want to split and the pattern that I got. The thickness of the leather is 2 millimeters and the pattern is 1.8. My goal is that area of the overlap will be no more than 0.8 millimeters. So I add 0.8 to the thickness of the pattern, 1.8, and now I know that I need to adjust the machine to the thickness of 2.6 millimeters. I do not forget that the leather is relatively hard and the detail is rather big, and the machine will not be able to reduce more of the thickness that I want. This part of the calculations might not seem as simple, as you never know for sure. Of course, it's better to test first if you have an extra piece of leather, and behind the screen I did it to make sure that my estimations were right. And they were. I got exactly that result that I expected. After successful splitting, I need to reduce the thickness along the other edges of the overlap, and I use a skiving machine for that. I also need to skive along the left and the right sides of the detail so it would not look leveled from the side. Well, machines might not always be available, but the majority of the operation can be done using hand tools. And this is a story, first of all, about how to work with thickness. And finally, the panel that is going to be attached to the closure needs to be splitted to 1 millimeter and even additionally skived along the edge. Now we need to put the snap buttons to where they're supposed to be, and we are moving towards the press machine. First we have to make holes, and we are going to use this set of tools. Holes on the top side, which is cognac colored leather, might be a bit smaller, but you always have to look at the hardware that you're working with, because it can be very different. And then we need to set the parts of the snap buttons with the help of this tool set. Be aware that tools that you might need to use to install the snap buttons can be different depending on the type of the buttons you have. And pay attention to those black squares of the reinforcement material that I applied on the back side. Reinforcement is recommended at all times when you apply the snap buttons, especially when you're working with thin and soft leather. We are done here, and now we are moving to the final step of the preparations. Here I got an idea. I look at the detail that I have my embossing on and decided that it looks a bit flat. I feel like I need to add something here, make it look more interesting, and decided to make it a bit puffy, make it more raised. So I split the embossed detail to 0.7 millimeters and prepare the other detail that will be the ground of my molding. I round its corners and scratch it with the sandpaper so it can be properly glued. After that, I apply the contact glue on the both details and assemble them together. What I need to do now is to press down the edges properly using the carving tool so it would look aesthetically pleasing. And now the detail looks much more interesting, don't you think? See you in the next video!